Welcome to Fresh Takes on the Future of Work. Today is our first episode of what we hope will be many, focused on fresh perspectives from business and HR leaders about the future of work. FRESH is an acronym: freedom, resourcefulness, empathy, simplicity, and happiness, values that are core to operating in the future of work. We'll tie back to these while exploring interesting stories and actionable ideas in 15 minutes or less. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jessica Podgajny, co-founder and CEO of Lluna, a technology platform that enables managers and their companies to offer personalized employment. Our first guest is our very own Aaron Kamholtz, co-founder and CTO of Lluna. Aaron has spent his career using data to reveal insights predominantly anchored in people analytics to help businesses succeed better and faster. Let's get fresh. Aaron, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Jess. Excited to have this conversation.
Awesome. All right, so first question for you, how do you define the future of work?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I think it's a bit of a misnomer. I think it's perhaps even a little misleading at times. I think about future of work, and to me, what it means is let's acknowledge and accept that the way we work now is not ideal or optimal, and that it should be something different. And what does that mean, and what does that look like? And the issue I have with it, I think, is that when we have the word future there, it maybe hides the urgency a little bit, because we're in it now, right? Maybe pre-pandemic, we could look at the future and not feel such an urgency about it. There wasn't anything so dramatic changing the way we work the way it is now, where it seems like every week it's a little different, every month is very different. And so future of work, I think, is about the changes that we need to make for today, for tomorrow. I don't think we need to look at it as something that's so far out in the future as most people would.
Yeah, really interesting. I love that. The future is now. It's not something that's 3, 5, 10 years out on the horizon. Really appreciate that. Okay, let's dream big for a moment. Assume you can snap your fingers, and whatever you're wishing for becomes real. What's one thing you personally want to see change about work life?
Yeah, another big question. If I could snap my fingers and make it real, I think more trust in relationships would be the thing to change. I think there are instances where there's very high trust, and that's great. And there are also obviously relationships where there isn't high trust. But I think if we all just started to have that really high level of trust and really accountability universally, it becomes a lot easier to really focus on results and outcomes, right? Because in the end, that's what sort of rules the land, is what gets done. And it's a lot easier to look at that when there's this universal trust and accountability. I don't care how or when work gets done, but I do care that it gets done. And so that's really a lot easier to achieve, to be in that state when there's a higher level of trust. And so I think that's a pretty significant barrier at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, is there anything that comes to mind for how people can cultivate that trust in a better way? Maybe the teams that are struggling today with that?
Yeah, I think empowerment goes a long way. When you offload responsibility and let people take something and run with it and have that space to really execute and think and strategize and plan and do work and show a result for it, it can help to improve that trust over time. And from that point on, it's a lot easier to have that sort of snowball impact of, well, if I trust you, I can hold you more accountable. If hold you more accountable, and maybe you can accomplish more. It could be a lot more professional growth. I think it's sort of that foundational building block to a lot more.
Awesome. Yeah, great segue into our next question, because I think what you're speaking to is the F in our fresh, the freedom, giving people freedom to kind of really figure out the best way for their work to get done. But as for fresh take, so freedom, resourcefulness, empathy, simplicity, and happiness, which area do you see as like the most pressing right now as we look at the future of work and the evolving employer-employee dynamic?
Yeah, I know I was just kind of talking about the freedom component, but I think there's actually a case that, especially for people who are in a hybrid or remote work environment, that their freedom might be at an all-time high, and they might have a bit more flexibility than they did in the past. I think the one that I really think is most pressing is probably happiness. There's so much negativity everywhere, and it's so easy to find it. It seems like something's going wrong all the time, that it can be really hard to focus on freedom, on resourcefulness, on empathy if you're not happy. You would just default to having a bit more of a negative mindset, and that's going to really close you off to a lot of other things out there. It's so easy, really, to forget all the things that bring you joy when you're surrounded by so much negativity. And how can you, empathy, simplicity, how can you focus on those things if you're not happy inside? I don't know that that's entirely possible, or at least you wouldn't be able to do it completely.
Yeah, wow. That's big. There's a lot to unpack there. We might need to save some of it for a follow-up discussion, but certainly happiness being core to having that open mind and really approaching work in a more positive way. So I love that answer. How do you think managers, the people really leading people right now, can best navigate the months ahead? Do you have any tips or suggestions for these people leaders that are trying to figure it all out?
Yeah, two kind of come to mind first. And so I think, right off the bat, spending more time with people on their teams, whether it's a one-on-one with a formal agenda or something more ad hoc out of the blue, just want to chat about something. I think it's important also to recognize boundaries of, individual comfort. I may not want to talk to my manager about something that's super personal, even if, there's the potential for that to improve our working relationship. So the managers need to, of course, be aware of that. But seeing kind of what's going on with them, what's on their mind, how are they working, what changes do they need to, have more support. Just staying close to people, I think, is more important now than probably ever before. And then to build off of that, the second point is really just a willingness to adapt, and not be too rigid in terms of planning in particular. Even it seems like of late there's been some big, vaccine news every day, right? And especially for people with unvaccinated folks in their house for one reason or another, these are pretty big decisions that can greatly impact the way that they live. And that's not even looking at work, right? People with kids are probably in one frame of mind and can't wait to do things that are, easier and safer perhaps if their kids are able to get vaccinated. And so it's hard for people to know what life will look like a month from now or even a week from now. And tying that back to work, planning, major initiatives, putting timelines on things, leave space for it to flex. Because if you're too rigid with it, it's likely going to cause some undue pressure and stress down the road.
Yeah. Great answers. I'm hearing a little bit of empathy in there, some resourcefulness, some simplicity even, kind of trying to simplify what feels very complex. So thank you for sharing those thoughts. Hopefully that'll be helpful for those who listen. I have a final question for you. And I'm curious, what's one company, and there's so much in the news right now. What's one company you admire for their fresh take?
Oh, yeah, definitely several come to the top of my mind. I think one that really stands out actually is Spotify. They, from what I've seen, really have a commitment to sort of trying and learning and iterating and being open and acknowledging that we might not know what's best, but we're going to try something and see how it works. And if it doesn't, we're going to go back and revisit it and improve it. And I think that level of honesty and like I was saying, that willingness to adapt, but letting the employees know that, even letting the world know it, right? They've got a pretty active public HR blog that they put out regular articles on, and showing that to the world, being open about it, is just tremendous. And I think it goes a long, long way in helping them, with all of those: freedom, resourcefulness, empathy, simplicity, happiness. The more everybody knows, the better we'll all be.
That's great. Spotify is one I also admire, so I love that you're bringing them up and agree on the test and learn mentality that they have. Just really excellent that they're able to be comfortable in the fact that they're not going to get it right 100% of the time, but that they're trying new things to see what's best for their employees. So, well, thank you for taking the time to be here today, Aaron, being our first guest on our Fresh Takes for the Future of Work. Thank you for sharing your perspectives, and don't forget to stay fresh.
Thanks for having me.